All right, in this video, I'm going to configure an S3 bucket, and then we're going to access the S3 bucket from a private subnet EC2, and then we're going to use the VPC endpoint to access the S3 bucket from the EC2 in the private subnet. So let's go ahead and take a look at the network diagram that I'll be working with here. So here you have it, guys. This is a simple network diagram here. I'm going to create my environment using the US East 1 region. I'll create a one main VPC, and then within that VPC I'll have two subnets. One is a public subnet and then one is a private subnet. And then for the public subnet, I'll spin up an EC2 instance. Same thing with the private subnet, I'll spin up an EC2 instance, and then I'm going to hop into the private subnet, and then I'll try to access the S3 bucket via the VPC endpoint. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the AWS console, and let's get started. Okay, so here I am in the AWS console. So the only VPC here is the default VPC. So what I want to do is create a VPC. So I'll call this VPC-A, and I'm going to give it the IP address of what is that we wanted to use. I'm going to use 192.168.0.0/26, which I don't have yet, but let me just go ahead and just add it here real quick. /26, and there it is. And let me just see if I can move this down to make it look nice and neat. All right, and that's what we're going to use here, and go back to the console. So I'll go 192.168.0.0/26, and I'll leave everything by default there and create VPC. All right, I got my VPC created. I'll go ahead and create my public subnet now. So there you can see there's no subnet. All these ones are default. So let me just create a new public subnet, and I'll choose this VPC-A for my subnet, and I'll call it pub-sub1, and I'll just choose availability zone 1A. All right, and then the subnet CIDR block is going to be 192.168.0.0/27, and I'll just hit create. Okay, I'm going to create another subnet. This will be my private subnet, and I'll choose VPC-A again. Subnet is going to be priv-sub1. Availability zone, I'll just choose 1B this time. And now I'm going to use a different subnet CIDR block, 192.168.0.32/27. All right, and I'll hit create subnet. Okay, so now I need to create an internet gateway for me to access the public EC2 instance. So internet gateway, I'll create an internet gateway here. And what are we going to call that? We're going to call it my-igw. All right, my-igw, and I'll hit create internet gateway. All right, and now I want to attach that internet gateway to the VPC that's existing. I'll choose the VPC-A, and I'll hit attach internet gateway. Okay, great, so that's already done. So now I need to create a route table. Actually, yes, let's go ahead and create route table. So now we have, oh, this is an old route table that I have here. All right, after I hit refresh, it's gone. So let me create a new public route table. So action, create route table. I'll call it pub-rt1, and I'm going to choose VPC-A, and I'll leave everything by default there. No need for tags, so create route table. All right, there's a route table, and then what we need to do is associate a subnet to that route table. So we know that there's two subnets here, and I want to associate the public subnet to this route table. Public subnet, save association, done. Okay, and then now I need to add a default route to the internet gateway, right? So here we go. I'll add a default route using an internet gateway that I created earlier. Okay, so there that is right there. So here's a public subnet, and we've associated the the /27 to the public subnet, and then we also created a default route using the internet gateway, so that way we can access the EC2 instance in the public subnet. All right, so we got our 2 subnets created. Now I need to create also a route table for the private subnet. So let's go ahead and create a route table, and we'll call it private-RT1, also VPCA, and I'll hit create route table. Right, subnet association. So right now there's no association. There's no subnets associated to this private route table. So I have this available here. So let's go ahead and add that subnet to the private route table. There it is. The .32/27 is now going to be associated to the private route table. All right, that's done, and that's all we need for now. Let's see what kind of routes we got. So that's the only route that we have right there, and that's all we really need. Okay. Routes. Local. /26 subnets /27. Okay, uncheck that. Let's look at the private one. Routes /26 subnet association /27. Okay, that looks good. So now we want to, now that we got those created already, let's create our EC2 instance, EC2A for the public subnet, and let's go ahead and do that in our console here. I'll type in EC2, and I'm going to click on this, and launch instance is what I want, and I'll call it EC2A, and I'll choose the default AMI and the default instance type key pair. I'm going to create a new key pair. I'll call it EC2 key pair, and I'll leave everything by default there, and I'll hit create key pair. Okay, key pair has been created there, and then now I'm going to assign that EC2 to be in the VPCA environment. All right, I'll choose VPCA there, and the public subnet is already chosen for me by default, so that's good. Okay, I want to assign a public IP address to the EC2, so I'll click enable, and now I want to create a security group. I'll call it EC2A-SG, and I'll just give it a name, access to EC2A. All right, so we're going to allow SSH, and where we're going to allow it from, we're going to say allow from my specific IP, and then I'm also going to add another rule. I'm going to say allow ICMP in case I need to test connectivity to it. I'll say from my IP as well, and I'll hit add security group. Let's see, do I need anything else? SSH, ping. I think that's good for now. I'll hit launch instance. Okay, great, that's done. Let's take a look at our EC2 instance. Right now we see 0. If we hit refresh, we should see 1, and there it is. And that one is running now, and it's already got a public IP address. So let's go ahead and create our second EC2 instance, and now we're going to create an EC2 instance here on this guy. All right, actually let me turn on the cursor here. All right, let me add that to this. Oops. Cursor, so that we can see what I'm doing. Okay, so there's my cursor. Sorry I didn't add that earlier, but now you can see more where my mouse is. Okay, so we're going to create this EC2 now. So let's go back into the AWS console, and then now we're going to call this EC2B. All right, default AMI, default instance type, key pair. We'll use the existing key pair, EC2-key pair, and for the network setting, we'll choose VPC-A for this instance, and then for the subnet, we want this to be in the private subnet, so we'll choose that. And then we don't need a public IP, so we'll keep that disabled. Create a security group. Yes, let's create a new one, EC2AB-SG, and I'll call this access to EC2B. And then I'm going to allow SSH from where? From custom, from the source IP of 192.168.0.0, actually .0.0/27, right? Because we're allowing SSH from EC2A into this EC2. Click on that, and then I'm also going to allow ping, right? ICMP ping, custom source, again 192.168.0.30/27. All right, I'll click on that, and then that's it. Let's launch the instance. All right, the instance is launched now. Let's go ahead and take a look at our EC2 instance. That says 1. If I hit refresh, it should say 2, and there's 2 right there. Now let me go ahead and go into the terminal. Actually, let me just take a look at this. Okay, if I uncheck this, I should see 2. Well, these are the old ones that I created earlier, so no need to worry about that. EC2A, let's take a look and see if we can SSH to it. There is the public IP address. Now, I need to go into the terminal, and then we need to use our EC2 key pair in order to SSH into the public EC2 instance. So ls-la EC2 key pair is what we downloaded earlier. We need to change the permission now. 400 EC2 key pair PEM, and you can see now that the permission has changed. All right, and then now I want to SSH-I EC2 key pair.pem, and then EC2 user at the public IP of the EC2A instance. All right, I'll hit yes, and there it is. I am in. The address of this Linux EC2 instance is 192.168.0.30, and we can verify that by looking at this 192.168.0.30. Okay, great. So that's there, and let's see if we can ping the EC2B instance, and that private IP is this guy. So go back into the terminal, ping, and now we can ping the EC2B instance. So that's good. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to SSH from the EC2A to EC2B, and in order for me to do that, I need to use the existing key pair, and this is what we're going to do here. So cat/, I'm going to open up another shell, new window, new window. Okay, so cd download. So this is where the directory where my key pair is located. So if I do a cat ec2 keypair.pem, this is the private key for it. So let me just do a copy paste here. I'll copy that, right? I hit Control C, and then I will go back into my original window. I'll call this ec2-keypair.pem, and then I will copy all that private key, and then Control C. All right, ls-la ec2-keypair. Okay, now we got to change the permission, so I'll go chmod 400 ec2-keypair pem. Okay, great. Now I can ssh-i ec2 keypair pem, and then now I need to use ec2-key user at what is my IP address for the ec2b. It was 192.168.0.58. I'll copy that, go back into my terminal, and I'll paste that in there, and I'll hit yes. And now I am in EC2 in the private subnet. So the IP address for that is 192.168.0.58. So let's take a look. And 192.168.0.58 for EC2B. So that's good. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to see if we can see any existing S3 bucket, because if we look at our diagram from here, here's where we are. We want to access an S3 bucket, but we haven't created an S3 bucket. So I'm going to go back into the console, and actually let's do a terminal here. So AWS S3 LS. Okay, so it's asking me for a credential. There is no access key that it recognizes. So what I need to do now is go into my AWS console, and I'm going to need to configure a access key. And I'll go into security credentials here, and I'll just say down here, access key. I need to create an access key for CLI purposes, and I'll hit next for that. I'll make sure that I confirm. I'll hit next, and then I'll just say AWS CLI, and I'll create access key. Okay, here's my access key for that. Okay, I need to copy this somewhere, so I'm going to go into this, right? Copy, and then go into the terminal. I'll say AWS configure. All right, access key ID, paste. All right, access key, secret access key is, here it is here. Let me show that, and I'll delete this later, so it's okay to show you guys this now. All right, default region, I'll just say US-East-1. Boom. Okay, great. Now, if I do an AWS S3 LS, it's thinking, at least it didn't give me an error. It's thinking, nothing's there, because it can't locate any S3 bucket, right? So let me go back into the S3 bucket and create an S3 bucket. So I'll go here, I'll go into S3. So let's create a bucket. We'll create a bucket, and we'll say general purpose. Bucket name is S3 bucket -95131. Okay, and I'll leave everything by default there, and I'll just say create bucket. Okay, great. S3 bucket is created. All right, but there's nothing in the bucket. If I click here, there's nothing in there. So now we need to upload a file into this bucket. So what am I going to do? I'm going to upload a file. And the file that I'm going to upload is already existed on my downloads folder. So I'll say add files, and S3 bucket is, let me go back here. Actually, let me just cancel added here. Actually, let me go ahead and create a new bucket. Okay, downloads. Okay, so CAT new S3 bucket file .txt. Boom. Let's call this caps. This is a new S3 bucket file to verify S3 access via VPC endpoint. Boom. Control C. Okay, that's done. Oops, let me just uncaps that. Cat new S3 bucket file. Okay, that's there in the download folder. So let me go ahead and go into the S3 bucket of the AWS console. Let me add a file. And there it is, new S3 bucket. Let me open that. Okay, that's open there. That's good. And we'll just hit upload. Boom. Upload successful. Great. Okay, so upload is successful. So what I want to do now is I want to check this and actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and go back into the terminal and go back into our S3 Control C. Let's see if we can see any S3 bucket now. And we still shouldn't be able to because we don't have a VPC endpoint, right? So basically, we were here and we wanted to get access to our S3 bucket, and it won't allow us because there is no mechanism for us to get to there. So now we have to create a VPC endpoint for our VPC, and that's going to allow us access to our bucket. So let's go ahead and do that. Go back into the VPC, and then from here I want to choose endpoints, and then I want to create an endpoint, and I'm going to call this endpoint, what is it here? Let's just call it this one, VPCA-S3 endpoint. Okay, go back to the console here, paste. AWS services is the category that I want to choose, and then for services I'm going to choose S3, and then I want to choose US East 1. All right, so I'm going to choose this one, the S3 US East 1. I'll choose that, and this is going to be a gateway. This is going to be a gateway type, so I'll choose that. And then VPC is going to be VPCA is what I need. And then how are we going to get there? We're going to get there via the private route table. All right, and then full access, create endpoint. Okay, endpoint created. Let's go back into our terminal, and all of a sudden there it is. It's seeing it now. There is our S3 bucket 95131. Let's take a look at it again. There it is. So that's that. So now let's see if we can access the file that we upload into the S3 bucket. So what I want to do is go back into the S3 bucket, and I want to get in here, and I'll click on this, and then I want to copy the S3 URI. All right, so there it is, and go back into my my EC2 in the private subnet, and I'll say AWS S3CP. Actually, let me see where I am first. PWD. Okay, this is my working directory. So I want to say AWS S3 copy, and then the S3 URI, and then I want to say /home/EC2-user. Okay, it's downloaded. There it is. It's downloaded. So if I do an ls, okay, there it is, the new S3 bucket file. And let's take a look. Cat new S3 bucket file. Okay, there it is. This is a new S3 bucket file to verify S3 access via VPC endpoint. So let's take a look at our network diagram here. So essentially what we did was, to recap, you know, we created a VPC, and then we created two subnet, a public and a private, and then we SSH into the public EC2 instance, and then from there we SSH into the private EC2 instance, and then we couldn't access our S3 bucket unless we created a VPC endpoint. So that's what I did, and so now that's done. So let's go ahead and break this down, tear it down, so that we don't incur any extra charges. So let's go back into the console here, and I say let's delete this file. We'll go ahead and say permanently delete objects. Okay, that's done. And then now we want to go into the bucket itself, and then we say delete, and then we'll just say delete this bucket name. Okay, that's done. There's no more buckets. Clearly there's nothing there. So now we want to go into our EC2 instance and just shut those down, right? Terminate is what we want. terminate the 2 instances. Okay, it's shutting down. And then while that's shutting down, I want to go into my VPC and I want to get rid of my internet gateway. First, I have to disassociate that, detach from the VPC. Map to, okay, because the instance is still running. So let's give it a second here. Let's give it a second here. The instance is still deleting, so that's why we're getting those errors. But in the meantime, can we delete the subnets yet? Let's go into the subnets here. Action, delete subnet. Okay, it's not allowing us because the instances are still trying to shut down and delete, so that's okay. Let's just take a look at the EC2 instance and see how they're doing. Okay, it's shutting down. It hasn't shut down fully, but it's shutting down. Okay, this one's terminated. Let's wait for this one here. Click the refresh button. Okay, that's terminated too. So now can I go ahead and go back into the, I got the security groups to delete as well. So let's do that. I'll check on these two and I'll hit action, delete security groups, and I'll just say delete. Okay, that's done. Refresh. Security group is deleted. Let's go back into our VPC. And here's our VPC, and I want to detach my internet gateway. Okay, that's detached. Now I can delete internet gateway. Okay, that's deleted. Route tables, we need to delete these route tables as well. Action, delete route table. Okay, so let's go into our subnets actually. Let's go ahead and delete our subnets. Refresh, delete. Action, delete subnet. Okay. Okay, our subnets are deleted. Route table, refresh, delete the route table. Delete. All right, route table is deleted. And what about our VPC endpoint? You know, if you delete the VPC, it should delete the VPC endpoint as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just go into the VPC, check on this, and say delete VPC. This will also delete the VPC endpoint. Okay, great, delete. Okay, there it is. It's thinking, it's done. Okay, so VPC doesn't exist, subnets don't exist, no route tables, no internet gateway, no security groups, no VPC endpoint, wherever that is, endpoints, nothing there. And what I want to do is delete some security credentials. Go down here, action, and delete. And then I need to delete the other security credentials to this one later on once I log off. Okay guys, so that's pretty much it. And if we can go back into the VPC, and yeah, everything's pretty much done. So let's take a look at our network diagram here. To recap, we created a VPC. You know, we also created 2 subnets, each in different availability zones, and then we SSH into our public EC2 instance in the public subnet via the internet gateway, and then from there we use the key pair to SSH into the private EC2 instance, and then we access our S3 bucket that we created by using a VPC endpoint. The endpoint type is the gateway, S3 gateway endpoint. So that's it guys. Hope that helps you guys, and Yeah, so I hope that helps you guys, and this one's pretty easy. So good luck, and I can't wait to do the next video as well.